The crying child in the rain. The rain poured hard that evening. Cold wind blew through the empty streets of the human colony on the edge of Sector 12. Most people were already inside, doors locked, lights dim. But one man, Jake, was walking home from work, his coat soaked, boots splashing in puddles. That's when he heard it. A small cry. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't a machine. It was a child. Jake stopped. He turned his head slowly. The sound came again, soft, broken, full of fear. He stepped off the path, his boots sinking into wet mud. Behind a broken fence under a metal sheet he saw her, a little alien girl. She had greenish skin and thin arms, her long wet hair stuck to her face. Her eyes were big, too big, and full of tears. Her small hands were shaking as she hugged her knees to her chest. She wore no shoes. Her clothes were torn. Jake didn't move for a moment. He looked around. No one else was there. No one was coming. He slowly took off his coat and knelt beside her. "Hey," he said gently. "You okay?" The little girl flinched. She pressed back against the wall, frightened. "I won't hurt you," Jake said softly. "Are you lost?" The girl didn't speak. She only stared at him wide-eyed. Her lips trembled. A shiver ran through her thin body. Jake held out the coat. "It's warm. You're cold. Please take it." She didn't move, at first. Then slowly, with shaking hands, she reached out. Her fingers touched the coat. She pulled it close and wrapped herself inside. Jake smiled gently. "That's better." He looked around again. Still no one. "Where's your family?" he asked. She didn't answer. "Can you speak?" She looked down. Then in a tiny voice she whispered one word. "Mama." Jake's heart sank. "You're all alone out here?" he asked. She nodded slowly. Jake stood up and reached for her hand. "Come on, you can't stay out here in the rain. My house is close. We'll get you dry, get you food." The girl hesitated. Then slowly she stood. She was small, maybe 5 or 6 years old in human years. She held the coat tight and walked beside him, her bare feet stepping carefully through puddles. Jake's home was small but warm. He led her inside, closing the door behind them. He grabbed a towel and started drying her hair gently. She flinched at first, but then she stood still, letting him help. He turned on the heater and gave her a blanket. "Sit here," he said kindly. "I'll get you something to eat." Jake went to the kitchen and heated some soup. He brought it in a small bowl and sat across from her. She stared at the bowl for a long time. Then slowly she picked up the spoon with her little fingers. Her hands were still shaking. She took a sip. Her eyes widened. She took another. Then another. Faster now. She was starving. Jake watched in silence, his chest tight. What had happened to her? Why was she alone in the rain? When she finished the soup, she leaned back and looked at him. Jake smiled again. "Feeling better?" She gave a small nod. "What's your name?" he asked. She didn't answer. "Where do you live?" Still no answer. Jake didn't push her. She was scared, tired, and confused. "You can sleep here tonight," he said. "The couch is soft. I'll stay nearby." He stood and grabbed a pillow and blanket for her. The girl lay, down still wrapped in his coat. She curled up small like a kitten, eyes already closing. Just before sleep took her, she whispered again, "Mama." Jake sat nearby and watched her for a long time. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know what she had gone through. But he knew one thing. He couldn't leave her out there, not in this world. Not in that storm. He turned off the light. The room fell quiet. But Jake's mind didn't rest. Who was this child? Where was her mother? And why did she seem so afraid of everyone? Except him. Morning sunlight pushed through the small window of Jake's house. The rain had stopped. Birds chirped quietly outside. The storm was over, but something was wrong. Jake woke with a strange feeling in his chest. He stood up quickly and looked toward the couch. Empty. The little alien girl was gone. The blanket was folded neatly. His coat was missing. The door was unlocked, just slightly open, letting cold air inside. Jake's heart raced. No. Not again, he muttered. He had promised to protect her. He had fed her, kept her warm, made her feel safe, and now she had vanished. Why? He stepped outside, scanning the quiet Colony Road. Nothing moved. No footsteps on the dry dirt path. No signs of a child. But then, something caught his eye. Near the wooden steps of his porch, half hidden by a flower pot, was a small piece of paper. It was wrinkled and wet at the edges, but the drawing on it was clear. Crayons. 3 figures. One was the little girl, green skin, big eyes. One was Jake, tall human with brown hair, and the third was a tall alien woman. She had long hair and large black eyes. One arm was wrapped around the girl. The other pointed toward what looked like trees. In the top corner, a symbol was drawn. Not words, just a swirl with 2 dots beside it. Jake stared at the paper for a long time. She's trying to tell me something. He followed the dirt road out of the colony, heading toward the nearby forest. It was thick, quiet, and full of strange sounds. The kind of place people avoided. He moved carefully, eyes scanning the ground for signs. It didn't take long. He found small footprints, barefoot, fresh, and next to them, larger ones, heavier, wider, an adult. Jake's body tensed. Is that her mother? He kept moving deeper. The forest grew darker. Twisted trees blocked the sunlight. The air was heavy with the smell of moss and wet bark, and then he heard it. A soft voice. Not human. He crouched low and peeked through the bushes. There, it was, a hidden shelter made from old ship parts and forest vines. Smoke rose from a tiny fire. He could see movement inside. He stepped closer. Then he saw her. The little girl. She was sitting on the ground beside a tall, thin alien woman. The woman's skin was pale green like the child's. Her eyes were tired and red. Her clothes were torn. One arm was wrapped in dirty bandages. Jake froze. That had to be her mother. The girl whispered something and pointed, right at Jake. The woman turned sharply. Their eyes met. She stood up fast, grabbing a sharp metal stick. Her body shook with weakness, but her face showed strength. Jake raised his hand slowly. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said calmly. She didn't understand. Her head tilted. Her grip tightened. The little girl ran between them. She held the drawing in her hands and showed it to her mother. The alien woman looked at the paper. Then she looked at Jake again. Her face changed. Her grip loosened. The girl said something softly. In her language, it sounded like, "Safe." Jake slowly stepped forward and knelt down. "You're her mother," he said gently. "She was alone. I just wanted to help." The woman said nothing, but she looked at her daughter. The girl nodded quickly. The mother lowered the stick. Jake looked at the fire, then at the woman's arm. "You're hurt." Still no words. But she didn't stop him as he reached into his backpack and took out a first aid kit. He opened it and pointed to the bandages. "Please, let me help." She hesitated, then nodded. Just once. Jake moved slowly. He cleaned the wound on her arm. It looked like a cut from metal, deep but not infected yet. The woman winced but didn't stop him. The girl sat beside them, holding both their hands. For the first time, they looked like a family. As the sun began to lower, Jake helped gather wood for their small fire. The woman watched him carefully, still silent but no longer afraid. The little girl laughed softly as she played with pebbles. It was the first time Jake had seen her smile. The mother sat down beside him, still quiet. She reached into a small bag and pulled out dry food. Alien. Rations. She broke a piece and handed it to him. A thank you. Jake took it with a soft smile. You're welcome. She pointed at herself. Jara, she said quietly. Jake blinked. Jara, is that your name? She nodded once. He pointed at the girl. Jara smiled faintly. Luma. Jake looked at the child. Luma. Pretty name. Luma. Giggled. Then Jara pointed at him. Jake? He nodded. Yes, Jake. They sat there, the three of them, under the trees. No more fear, no more silence. Just a new beginning, but deep in the woods. Something watched them. Two red eyes blinked. From the shadows, they weren't alone. Jara didn't sleep that night. She sat near the fire with Luma tucked in her lap, the child's small head resting against her chest. Her sharp eyes stayed on Jake, who lay across from them on the cold ground, wrapped in his coat. Even with his kindness, trust was not easy. Jara had seen too much, fleeing from colony to colony, hunted, betrayed. Her kind, what was left of them, were always treated as less, weak, dirty, unwanted. But Jake was different. He hadn't asked for anything. He had protected Luma. He had cleaned her wounds. And, now, he slept out in the open, leaving her and her daughter by the warm fire. That meant something. Still, Jara kept her weapon close. Morning came slowly. Jake woke to the smell of something strange, a soft, earthy scent. He opened his eyes and saw a small pan over the fire. Jara was cooking something. It looked like roots, sliced and roasting on a metal plate. She noticed him looking and said nothing. But after a few seconds, she tore off a piece and handed it to him. Jake took it, careful not to offend. It was chewy, slightly bitter but warm. Jara watched his face. He smiled. Not bad. Her lips moved, trying to copy the word. Not bad? Jake laughed softly. Yes, not bad. Thank you. Jara said nothing more, but her eyes softened. Luma ran to him and hugged his arm. Jake. He ruffled her hair. Hey, little one. Sleep well? She nodded with a bright smile. Jake looked at Jara. She's a strong kid. You've done well. Jara lowered her gaze. Alone. Jake hesitated. What happened to your people? Jara's jaw tightened. She looked away. Jake didn't push. He just sat quietly. After a long pause, Jara whispered, They took us, workers, slaves. When I ran, they hunted. Still hunt. Jake frowned. Humans? She shook her head. Not all. Some. Worse. She reached into her bag and pulled out a broken tag. It had strange alien writing on it. The metal was burned, scratched, and dented. Mine, she said. Property. Jake's heart twisted. She had been owned. No one owns you now, Jake said firmly. Jara looked at him, her eyes narrowed, testing his words. You and Luma are safe with me, he added. Jara didn't smile, but her shoulders relaxed, just a little. Later that day, Jake worked to repair the shelter. He used rope, cloth, and broken ship panels to make the roof stronger. Jara watched silently as he worked. Luma helped by handing him small tools and holding up sticks. It felt like something simple, something almost normal. A home. By sunset, Jake was finishing the last patch when he heard a low growl. He froze. Jara heard it too. She stood quickly and pulled Luma behind her. Jake stepped out into the clearing and looked into the forest. Nothing. Just silence. Then, movement. A figure in the trees. Tall. Covered in black armor. Jake's blood ran cold. A bounty hunter. They had found them. The figure stepped into view. Its helmet gleamed, and a long gun rested on its back. It stared at Jake. Then, At Jara and Luma, Jara's hand tightened on her blade. Jake stepped between them. "She's under my protection," he shouted. The hunter didn't speak. It just tilted its head. Jara hissed something in her language. Luma held onto her leg, shaking. Jake reached down and picked up a heavy branch. "You'll have to get through me." Still silence. Then, the hunter slowly turned around and vanished into the trees. Jake didn't move. Not until Jara touched his shoulder gently. He turned. She looked into his eyes. "You would fight? For us?" she asked. Jake nodded. "Every time." Jara's hand stayed on his shoulder longer than needed. Something had changed. That night, they didn't sleep apart. Jake sat by the fire. Jara sat beside him. Luma slept in both their arms. Jara looked at the stars above the treetops. "You are strange for a human," Jake chuckled. "You're not so bad for an alien." She blinked at him, confused. "Not bad?" He smiled. "Yes, not bad." Jara looked down at Luma's peaceful face. "She calls you Papa." Jake's heart skipped. "I'm not," he said softly. Jara looked at him. "Not yet." Jake didn't know what to say. But his hand found hers in the quiet, and she didn't pull away. The wind was strong that morning. Jake stood near the fire, boiling water for tea. Jara braided Luma's long hair while humming a quiet tune in her native tongue. It was a rare, peaceful moment. The birds chirped. The sky above the trees was clear and bright. Jake smiled as he watched them. It almost felt like a dream. He had never imagined his life would include an alien mother and her child. Yet here they were, laughing, alive, together. Then the sky changed. A loud hum filled the air. The birds flew away in panic. Jara stood up, sharply. Luma ran to Jake. Jake looked up and froze. A ship, small, fast, and black as night. It flew low over the trees, circling once, then again. Slower this time. Jara's eyes widened. "Tracker drone." Jake's heart dropped. "They found you." Jara grabbed her pack. "We must run." But it was too late. The ship hovered above the trees and released a flare, a signal. Then it turned and sped away. Jake grabbed his backpack and pulled out his pistol. "We don't run, not this time." Jara looked at him, stunned. "What?" "You've been running for too long," he said. "Let them come. I'll protect you." Luma clung to his leg, scared. Jara grabbed Jake's hand. "We don't win. Against them." Jake's eyes were hard. "Maybe not. But I won't let them take you." They didn't have much time. Jake moved fast, helping Jara and Luma deeper into the woods. He knew a place, a cave hidden under thick vines. He had used it once during a storm. Inside it was dark and dry. "Safe, for now." "I'll go back," Jake said. "I'll leave signs that lead the wrong way." Jara grabbed his wrist. "They will kill you." He looked into her eyes. "Better me than Luma." Her voice trembled. "Why do you care?" Jake didn't answer right away. "Because no one cared about me once. I know what it feels like to be unwanted, and I know what it means when someone stays." Jara said nothing, but she let go of his wrist. Jake returned to the shelter and began his trick. He broke twigs and left fake tracks toward a river. He burned old cloth so the scent would follow the wrong path. He smeared blood, his own, on a tree to look like a wound trail. Then he climbed a tree and waited. He didn't wait long. 3 bounty hunters appeared. 2 were tall, armored, and silent. The third was human. Jake narrowed his eyes. The human bounty hunter knelt near the ashes of the fire. "They were here recently." One of the aliens sniffed the air. "She's close." They followed the trail Jake made. Jake exhaled slowly. It was working. Hours passed. Back in the cave, Jara sat with Luma, arms around the child. The cave was silent except for the sound of dripping water. Luma whispered, "Mama, will he come back?" Jara didn't answer at first. Then she kissed Luma's head. "Yes, He is strong. But she didn't feel strong. She felt afraid. She felt something else too. Something unfamiliar. Hope. The sun began to fall. Jake returned, scratched and tired. Blood ran down his arm, but his smile was strong. They followed the trail. They won't find you. Jara ran to him, eyes wide. You're hurt. Jake waved it off. Just a scratch, nothing serious. She took his hand and sat him down. She pulled out clean cloth and began wrapping his arm. Jake chuckled. You're getting good at this. Jara looked into his eyes. You lied to them, risked your life. Jake nodded. You're not just aliens anymore. You're my family now. Jara froze. She searched his face for truth, and she found it. That night, they stayed in the cave. No fire. Just quiet breathing and the sound of distant night insects. Luma fell asleep between them. Jake lay back, staring at the rock ceiling. Jara rested beside him, closer than before. I was afraid of humans, she whispered. I thought they only took. Jake turned his head. Some do. But you, she said softly. You gave. He didn't reply. He didn't need to. She touched his hand, slowly, gently. For the first time in years. She felt safe. But far away, the hunters realized the trail was false, and this time, they were angry. They wouldn't stop now. They were coming back. And next time, they'd bring more than just trackers. The morning air smelled of wild berries and wet leaves. A soft wind blew through the forest as birds sang overhead. In the hidden cave, light from the rising sun danced across the stone walls. Jara was already awake. She moved quietly, gathering herbs and roots in a small bowl. Her steps were silent, graceful. She had lived in hiding for years. Survival was all she knew. But today, she felt something different. Peace. Luma was asleep, curled up beside Jake. The child held his arm tightly, her small face calm and safe. Jara watched them from the cave entrance, something warm blooming in her chest. Later that morning, Jake helped Jara clean the wild vegetables she had collected. He had never seen half of them before, but he followed her lead. She crushed herbs with a stone, added them to a bubbling pot over a small fire, and stirred it with focus. What is this? Jake asked. Jara smiled faintly. Lirin root soup. Very old recipe. Jake sniffed the air. Smells strong. Jara smirked. Too strong for weak humans? Jake laughed. I'll risk it. Luma clapped happily. Papa eats everything. Jake blinked. Wait, what did you call me? Luma looked up at him, innocent and proud. Papa. Jara froze. Jake looked at Jara. Jara looked away. Jake crouched to Luma's level. Luma. Do you think I'm your papa? The girl nodded. Mama said Papa was strong and kind, and never left. That's you. Jara didn't deny it. Jake stood slowly, heart pounding. Jara, is that what you think too? Jara didn't answer. She turned back to the soup, stirring it in silence. They ate together quietly. The soup was thick, hot, and spicy. Jake coughed after the first bite, and Luma giggled. Jara watched them with a soft look in her eyes. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like prey. She felt like a mother. She felt like a woman. Jake wiped his mouth and leaned back. That was amazing. You're a great cook. Jara gave him a small nod. My mother taught me. Jake smiled. She must have been proud of you. Jara stared at the fire. She never got the chance. There was a long pause. Then she turned to him. You saved my child. You bled for her. You made her laugh. No male of my kind ever did such things. Jake stayed quiet. Jara stood and faced him fully. Her voice was low and steady. My people, do not take mates easily, we only ask once. Jake's heart pounded. Ask, what? Jara stepped closer. I ask you now, human, will you become Luma's father and my mate? Jake was speechless. Luma's eyes lit up. Jake looked at the woman standing in front of him, battle-worn, proud, tired, and beautiful in a way he couldn't explain. You're serious? He whispered. Jara nodded. I do not play with such things. Jake looked down at Luma, who held his hand tightly, then back at Jara, and he smiled. Yes. Jara didn't react right away. She only blinked. Then she stepped forward and gently placed her forehead against Jake's, a silent tradition, her people's way of bonding. Luma jumped with joy. Now I have a real papa. Jake chuckled, hugging her tight. Jara sat beside them. She wasn't smiling, not with her lips, but her eyes glowed. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't alone. That evening, they gathered sticks to build a stronger fire. Jake sharpened stones for traps to catch small animals. Jara drew protective symbols near the cave using glowing powder. Luma helped both, her face full of light. Jake sat beside Jara after the work was done. Where will we go after this? He asked. Jara thought for a moment. Somewhere we're not hunted. Jake looked up at the stars. Maybe that place doesn't exist. Jara leaned her head on his shoulder. Then we make it ourselves. Jake smiled. Maybe she was right. But far beyond the trees, dark shapes moved again. The bounty hunters had returned to the forest with scanning drones and heat seekers. And this time, they had Luma's old DNA tag. They had her scent. And they were closing in. The days that followed were quiet. Jake, Jara, and little Luma worked together like a small family. They cleaned the cave, hunted small animals, and even built a water trap to collect fresh rain. Jara taught Jake how to cook alien roots without burning his tongue, and Jake taught Luma how to whistle using a leaf. At night, they sat by the fire. Jara leaned against Jake, her eyes finally calm. She had stopped looking over her shoulder, every second. Luma slept with her arms around both of them. For the first time, it felt like they belonged. But peace doesn't last long when danger is still hunting. Far away, in the metal belly of a black starship, a screen lit up. Target confirmed, said one of the bounty hunters. His voice was cold, without emotion. The human among them narrowed his eyes. Same location 3 days in a row. They're not running anymore. Then it's time, said the lead hunter. We move at dawn. Outside the ship, 3 drone scouts zipped into the sky, silent, fast, and deadly. Back at the cave, Jake was setting new traps. He had placed silent alarms using wires and metal cans, just in case someone approached. He still had the pistol in his pack, but 1 bullet remained. He didn't tell Jara. She was hanging strips of dried meat near the fire while Luma hummed softly. Jake watched them with a smile. But then, clink. A metal can near the cave entrance rattled. Jake stood straight, his eyes locked with Jara's. She moved fast, grabbing Luma and placing her behind a large rock. Jake crouched near the entrance, hand on his weapon. Silence. Then, buzzing. A scout drone. It zipped through the trees, scanning with a red beam. Jake grabbed a rock and hurled it. Bang! The drone spun and crashed against a tree. But the noise was enough. Jara's voice dropped to a whisper. They're here. Jake ran to her. Take Luma and go to the old tunnel I showed you. Jara looked at him. Not without you. I'll follow. I just need to buy you a few minutes. Luma grabbed Jake's hand. Papa, no. Jake knelt. I'll be okay. Go with Mama. Jara hesitated, but nodded. She lifted Luma in her arms and vanished into the shadows. Jake turned back toward the forest and waited. The bounty hunters arrived fast, 2 aliens in black armor and 1 human with a long rifle. They stepped into the clearing with silent steps. Jake stood in the open, hands raised. Looking for someone? He asked loudly. The human pointed his gun. Where is she? Jake smirked. Gone. Like your honor. The alien beside the human growled and charged. Jake ducked, rolled and fired. Bang! The last bullet slammed into the attacker's shoulder, knocking him back. Jake ran into the trees, leading them away from the cave. The human shouted, "Do not let him escape." Jara moved fast through the secret tunnels Jake had shown her. Luma clung to her tightly, but her face was brave. "Mama, Papa will be okay, right?" Jara didn't answer. She didn't know, but her feet moved faster. Jake darted between trees, breathing hard. Branches cut his face, thorns scratched his arms, but he didn't stop. He reached a ridge, jumped down, and rolled into a dry riverbed. But then, pain, a sharp sting in his leg. He looked down, a tranquilizer dart. His steps slowed. The human bounty hunter stepped from behind a tree, rifle aimed. "You tried, Jake, I'll give you that." Jake dropped to one knee. "Why?" he whispered. "Why chase them?" The man walked closer. "Because she's worth a fortune. One alien mother, one hybrid child, rare blood, special genes. People pay well." Jake tried to stand. The man lifted his weapon. Then, whoosh! A blade flew through the air and struck the hunter's arm. Jara. She leapt from the trees with a wild cry, another blade in hand. The human shouted in pain and stumbled back. Jara kicked his gun away and stood over him, blade to his throat. Jake looked up, dizzy. "You came back." Jara helped him up. "I never left." They heard rustling behind them. Another hunter was coming. Jara looked into Jake's eyes. "Can you run?" "Barely. Good enough." She pulled his arm over her shoulder. They ran. They didn't stop until they reached the far side of the forest where a human supply station was hidden. One of Jake's old contacts, a miner named Hobb, ran the place. Hobb saw the blood and panic on their faces. "Trouble?" Jake nodded. "The worst kind." Hobb looked at Jara and Luma. "Family?" Jake didn't hesitate. "Yes." Hobb waved. "Them inside. Then they're safe here." That night Jake lay in bed, his leg bandaged. Jara sat beside him, watching him breathe. Luma slept peacefully in a cot nearby. "You shouldn't have come back for me," Jake said weakly. Jara smiled. "You did the same." She leaned down and kissed his forehead, her people's deepest sign of love. "You said yes." She whispered, "Now you don't get to leave me behind." Jake chuckled. "Deal." But outside, hidden in the dark sky above, the bounty hunters were already watching, and they were done playing games. The sky above was endless and full of stars. The human outpost deep in the woods was quiet, guarded by old machines and dusty walls. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't big. But to Jara, it felt like safety, for the first time in her life. Inside, the metal cabin, Jake was healing. His leg was still weak, but the color had returned to his face. He laughed softly as Luma placed wildflowers on his head and called him Forest King. Jara stood at the doorway, arms crossed, a rare smile on her lips. This was hers now. Her daughter. Her protector. Her mate, she had asked. He had said yes. And now, she would make it real. That evening, Jara walked to the roof of the outpost and looked at the night sky. Stars blinked above, and the twin moons of this world were bright and clear. She sat in silence, her long hair brushing against her back in the breeze. Jake joined her, limping slightly but smiling as he sat beside her. "Pain better?" she asked. Jake nodded. "Only when you're near." Jara tilted her head. "Was that flirting?" Jake grinned. "Trying my best." Jara looked at the stars. "My people have no temples, no rings. When we bond, we do it under open sky with only the stars as witness." Jake followed her gaze. "Then let's do it," she blinked. "Now?" Jake reached into his coat and pulled out a small necklace made from string and a blue stone, one Luma had found and painted. "It's not gold, and it's not alien metal. But it's ours," he said. Jara took the necklace gently. Her fingers trembled. Jake stood, then knelt before her. "Jara, you gave me a reason to fight, a reason to stay, a reason to love. Will you stand with me, now and forever, as my mate?" Jara looked at him, her throat tight. Then she took his hand and said softly, "I already do." They stood beneath the stars, alone, yet not alone. Luma peeked from the stairway, eyes wide with joy. Jara placed the necklace around Jake's neck. Jake pressed his forehead to hers. No words were needed after that. The sky accepted their vows. The stars shimmered brighter. The next morning, the peace shattered. Explosions rocked the trees outside the outpost. Dust rained from the ceiling. Alarms howled. Jake leapt from bed, grabbing his old pistol. Jara grabbed Luma and shielded her body. Hob ran in, shouting, "They're back! Ships! 3 of them! Landing nearby!" Jara's face turned hard. "No, more running," she said. Jake looked at her. Agreed. He turned to Hob. "Can the station's shields hold?" "Not long," Hob answered. "You've got maybe 20 minutes. Jake looked at Jara. "Then let's make them count." The battle began quickly. The bounty hunters stormed the gates, firing stun blasts and scattering the station's guards. Jake fought with whatever he had, pipes, tools, even fists. Jara moved like wind and fire, using her blades with deadly skill. Luma and Hob hid deep inside a locked storage chamber. "Keep her safe," Jake told him. Then he returned to the fight. Jara faced the lead hunter, the one who had tracked her, across galaxies. "You were sold," he hissed. "You belong to the Syndicate." Jara's eyes burned. "I belong to no one." She leapt forward, blades flashing. The hunter struck back, metal against metal, sparks flying. But Jara didn't fall this time. She was faster, stronger. She had something to protect, and love had made her fierce. Jake fought beside her, bruised and bleeding, but never falling. Side by side, they pushed the hunters back. One by one, the enemy ships lifted off, retreating into the stars. The Syndicate had lost. They would not return. Hours later, the station was quiet again. The sun began to rise. Jake leaned on Jara, limping badly but grinning. "We won," he whispered. Jara kissed his cheek. "No, we lived." Luma ran to them, hugging both tightly. "Are we safe now?" she asked. Jake looked at Jara. Jara looked at the rising sun, and for the first time they both believed the answer was yes. Later that night, Hob threw a small celebration. Old human music played from dusty speakers. Jara wore a clean robe, made from soft cloth. Jake wore his patched-up jacket with pride. Luma twirled around the room, her laughter echoing. One by one, humans and aliens from nearby camps came to see the family that had stood and survived. They offered food, gifts, and quiet respect. They weren't outcasts anymore. They were something greater, a symbol. Under the twin moons, Jake and Jara danced slowly, hand in hand. She rested her head on his chest. "Will we always be running?" she asked. Jake shook his head. "Not anymore. This is our world now, and together, we'll protect it." Jara closed her eyes. In that moment, there was no fear, no pain, no chains from the past, just love and stars.